We all think we know the story of the dot-com bubble, right? A wild time of crazy greed, followed by a huge, necessary crash. But what if I told you that whole story is basically a lie? A myth we've been telling ourselves for 20 years. A myth that is still messing with how we think about technology, ambition, and the future.
To really get to the bottom of this, we've got to start with a tricky question, a contrarian one. This question forces you to step outside of what everyone else believes. And when it comes to the dot-com bubble, what everyone believes has been the wrong story for a very long time.
You know, Nietzsche totally nailed it here. When a popular belief comes crashing down, we call it a bubble. But the crazy ideas that fueled it, they don't just disappear. They leave behind a new set of lessons learned. And sometimes, those lessons are just as delusional as the bubble was. And that's exactly what happened after the dot-com crash.
When we think about the 90s, we picture this decade-long party, right? A time of massive prosperity, endless optimism, grunge music, the Berlin Wall coming down, and this non-stop economic boom that led straight into the internet craze. It's a fantastic story, but it's not what really happened.
The truth is, for a huge chunk of the 90s, the mood was the exact opposite of optimistic. It was a decade really defined by anxiety. We're talking a recession, a painfully slow recovery, and a deep, nagging fear about the future of the global economy.
I mean, the facts tell a totally different story. The decade kicked off with a recession. By '92, unemployment was still climbing, and there was just this general feeling of blah. Even in Silicon Valley, things were slow. Get this, at Stanford, the very heart of the tech world, economics was a more popular major than computer science. Tech just seemed like a small-time sideshow, not the future.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Look at the paradox on this slide. Just as the NASDAQ starts its insane vertical climb, the rest of the world was literally falling apart. You had the Asian financial crisis in '97, which just wiped out entire economies. Then the Russian ruble crisis in '98, which almost took the whole global financial system down with it. So why on earth was tech booming when it felt like the world was ending?
The answer is actually pretty simple, but it changes everything. The old economy was broken. It just couldn't keep up with globalization. So investors weren't betting on the internet just out of blind optimism. They were betting on it because it felt like the only hope, the only lifeboat in a storm. The new economy wasn't just another option. It was the only way forward.
And this desperation for a new path fueled an 18-month period of pure uncut mania. We're talking about insane launch parties every single week, people running like 6 startups at once. It was a bizarre time where acting rationally actually made you seem weird. It was an absolute gold rush, and the craziness was contagious.
To really understand how nuts it was, let's zoom in on a company that was born right in the eye of this hurricane, PayPal. And their mission was not small. They wanted to create a whole new internet currency to replace the US dollar.
So after their first idea failed, they switched to sending money by email, but growth was slow. So they did something that sounds completely bonkers. They just started paying people to use their product. $10 for you to sign up, $10 for every friend you brought in. This strategy gave them explosive, exponential growth, but it also meant they were burning through cash at an exponential rate. It was a huge all-or-nothing bet.
They knew the party had to end sometime, so they were in a flat-out race against time to raise a ton of money. In March of 2000, they did it. They closed a $100 million funding round, and just as the deal was done, the entire market collapsed. That money saved them. It proved that in that environment, their absolutely insane strategy was actually the only rational one.
The crash was brutal. I mean, the NASDAQ peaked over 5,000 and then just went into a free fall. But here's the key. People didn't see this as just a market correction. It was seen as a kind of divine judgment, a moral punishment for all the optimism and ambition of the 90s. The era of hope was officially canceled.
And in the rubble of that crash, the business world collectively learned 4 big lessons. A new dogma was created to make sure a disaster like that could never happen again. The only problem? Those lessons? They were almost completely wrong.
So here they are, side by side. On the left, you've got the dogma that was born from fear. On the right, the contrarian truths that got thrown out with the bathwater. We need to unpack this, because this flawed thinking is still holding people back today.
All right, first up, grand visions were seen as the problem. They inflated the bubble. So the new rule became think small. Tiny, incremental steps were the only safe way forward. If you said you wanted to change the world, people basically thought you were delusional.
But here's the thing about small steps. They usually lead to small outcomes. The real lesson should have been
that it's so much better to risk being bold, even if you fail, than it is to play it so safe that you're guaranteed to be insignificant.
Second, having a big plan was now considered arrogant, so lean and flexible became buzzwords for, let's be honest, being completely unplanned. The new strategy was to just try a bunch of random stuff and treat business like one big experiment.
But a business without a plan is just a ship without a rudder. That's why even a flawed plan is better than no plan at all. At least it gives you a direction, a map. It gives you a starting point you can actually learn from.
The third dogma was all about playing it safe by avoiding anything new. The smart move was to find a product that was already successful and just make a slightly better version of it. Don't create, just iterate. But this completely ignores a basic truth of business. Competition is a killer. It's a race to the bottom that just destroys profits for everyone. Real lasting value comes from creating a monopoly, from building something so unique that no one else is even in your market. And finally, because of all the wasteful advertising during the bubble, a new myth was born. A great product sells itself. Technology became all about engineering, and sales and marketing were seen as dirty words.
But a brilliant product that nobody knows about is completely worthless. The reality is that technology isn't just about what you build, it's about how you get it to people. Sales and distribution aren't afterthoughts. They are just as important as the product itself.
So these 4 flawed ideas basically became the conventional wisdom for an entire generation. And it really makes you ask a tough question. How much of what you believe to be common knowledge is actually just a big overreaction to somebody else's mistake from long ago?
Look, this isn't just a history lesson about the stock market. The real takeaway here is timeless. True insight, the really valuable kind, doesn't come from just agreeing with the crowd or even from automatically disagreeing with them. It comes from having the clarity and the courage to simply think for yourself.